what is all the messaging we continue to see from the very top? There is such a contempt for women in America.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and it's never been as evident to me in my lifetime as it is right now. Because right now, they're just saying whatever they want. They're going for it, man. I mean, right?
Let's see, it's December 18th, 2025. This is Borderland Talk. I'm your host, Jen Budd. And today I have with me Lisa Gonzalez. She is a mom, correct?
I am a mom.
And and a wonderful wife, I'm sure. And you also I don't know what your background is as far
Well,
as
I'm happy to
employment.
share
You'll
that.
let me know. Go
Sure,
ahead.
absolutely. So, I have spent the last several decades working in and among nonprofit organizations, very passionate advocate of working with vulnerable children and also women. So
Okay.
I have served on many boards. In nonprofits. I was worked in domestic violence shelters in Las Vegas, as well as in Ohio, and then served on the board of directors for several years. I helped start a children's crisis shelter, one of only two in the state of Ohio. We had to get
Mm.
laws passed for children from birth through 12, and also served as an executive director of an organization serving youth from the most vulnerable youth in our community, really, from kindergarten through 12th grade. And we ran an after school program for youth and year round, also summer. So we were serving
Hmm.
130 kids every day.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, The
Mhm.
reason why, so I discovered you, I discovered you. You didn't exist until I discovered you, Lisa. Um, no, but I discovered your writing on you post on a Substack account called Eleanor's Squad. And the article that you wrote, well, a couple of them started cluing me in onto your writing, but this one specifically, we were talking before we started recording, and I said it just like every paragraph, I'm like, holy shit. So it's called The Truth of the Lie. Do you want to kind of give us a synopsis of what this is? And then I want to kind of explain why it's just absolutely floored me.
Sure. So I kept thinking about, when I was working at a domestic violence shelter back when I was actually young, back in those days, in my early 20s in Las Vegas. And I had the opportunity to be in court to see a woman who was terrorized, as were her children. And from this man who was pure evil, um, to the extent that her one son, who was only like 7 years old, would start shuddering, shiver, like shaking when
Mm.
mentioning his father. You could just see this real visceral reaction, terror, right? He still wet the bed. He was having all kinds of psychological issues because of the abuse that was sustained in his household. He was abusive towards the children, but then also even more so with the mother. But when
Mm.
I observed this completely different human being that transformed themselves miraculously in front of the court and the judges. And of course, you have this woman who is terrified because there she is having to face off in court with this individual who has just terrorized and tortured she and her children. So naturally, the way she is presenting herself, she does not look, she's shaking, she's
She's
crying.
a mess.
She's reasonably a wreck. I was just amazed at how, because if you're a person just walking into this situation and you don't really have, you're on a jury. I mean, I understand that judges know more, but some of them, depending on who you get, it's a crapshoot. Are they really
Mm.
understanding? Do they understand what is at stake here and the abuse that has actually been sustained? Because what you have in front of you is a woman who looks kind of a wreck, an emotional basket case, reasonably so. And this
Right.
man who looks just calm, cool, collected, the quintessential family man. And because he
Mm-hmm.
knows his fluency in that language of the, not just the language, but the optics of
Mm-hmm.
this family man, right? Was unbelievable to me. I just couldn't, aside from the abuse, I couldn't, I was having a hard time coming to terms with, I had never witnessed that, right, in my
Mm-hmm.
life, because we have a tendency to think that people who are evil, you can see it coming. You can
Mm-hmm.
see the depravity. You'll be able to pick it up. That is not the case, right? Because they know
Mm-hmm.
how to play it. They're
Right.
like chameleons. And someone had recommended the book by M. Scott Peck. So I had read Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck, and they had recommended the book The People of the Lie. And M. Scott Peck was a clinical psychologist who had written this book. And the whole premise behind The People of the Lie was that, this psychologist was basically seeing these people that, for all intents and purposes, he said they were regular everyday people. Like they weren't mentally ill. And yet they were causing so much incredible harm to so many
Right.
people in their lives. And he talked about that, evil exists and it all starts with the lie. And first, they have to lie to themselves, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
big, they lie, that's where it all flows from. They're lying to themselves because all that really matters, it's not doing introspective work and trying
Mm-hmm.
to grow and trying, because we all know that when we actually want to achieve growth and move forward, we have to take a really hard look in the mirror and
Mm-hmm.
ask ourselves some really hard questions. Oh, no, no, that's not what it's about. It's about looking good. It's about all about optics, narcissism, but then also the way polite society, how we help them,
Mm-hmm.
we assist them, unbeknownst to us, through
Mm-hmm.
through the refusal of challenging the lie.
Mm-hmm.
What are you taught? Like I was taught in business growing up in corporate, I've worked in corporate America as well as nonprofits. And I was taught, you don't ever call somebody out for lying. That's not what you do. And you don't even use, I mean, I was literally told once a long time ago from a boss, I'm like, but they're lying. I know, Lisa, but you can't say that. I think that's mostly the case. And I think a lot of people would agree that's you're kind of, we skirt around it. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we use language um, to diffuse it. We use euphemisms to soften it, to make it sound better, to give people an
Mm-hmm.
out. And we create an environment where little by little, we can even belong to a business or a corporation where they might be doing horrible things, but we don't see it that way because we only have this little part of, it's all sectioned out, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're just in
Compartmentalized. Yeah.
HR. We don't have anything to do with that product that we're making to maybe, I don't know, harm children, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
So the arms industry would be a great thing to, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, who we're selling to and who is suffering the consequences of this product that we're
Mm-hmm.
participating in. That's not of consequence to me. I just work for
Mm-hmm.
them, right? Um, and we don't have a tendency to call people out for the lies. In polite society, we just want everything to be calm. And institutions are the person who challenges. And I've always been, call it, I don't know what the reason is. I'm Puerto Rican, I'm Italian. I was born on the 4th of July during a tornado. I don't know, maybe it's a combination of all these things, but I've always been a person that challenges, not for the sake of it, but if something is going on in front of me, I identify it. And
Yeah.
I'm sure as you know more so than I, in the position that you've put yourself in as a whistleblower and calling people out, how well is that ever received? To be the person that says, "Hey, excuse me, hold on a minute. Can we stop? Because this is wrong. What's happening here? No, I don't agree with this. Should we talk about this? We need to fix this." I mean, it is literally like people look at you like you just grew another head. And there's an alien sitting in front of them because we're not supposed to call that out. That's the elephant in the living room. We're supposed to skirt around it. We accommodate the most dysfunctional person among us.
I would say in my journey in this, I think, I originally have always been mostly liberal, and then I wanted to go to law school to be a civil rights attorney. And then I joined this thing called the Border Patrol, not knowing what it was. And it was a little bit different back then because we didn't have the internet, or it was just getting started, didn't know anything, being an Alabama girl and this and that. And I struggled with a long time trying to understand how I could do 6 years in that agency. And at first I didn't think I separated families, but then the more I analyzed it and looked at it, I did separate families. And being a part of a system of brutality and cruelty like that, and feeling honorable, like I was doing something exceptional. And I think after my suicide attempt, the most difficult and yet rewarding type of work that I did was looking at myself and saying, you obviously have some problems with this. I would say one part of my blindness to the brutality and cruelty and racism, I think part of what caused that is being the age I am, growing up in the South, obviously, but also just being ignorant of the southern border and the immigration systems. And then right before I graduate, a month before I graduate, being raped into the agency and not understanding the systemicness. I obviously had no idea they've been doing this to women since the very first women came in the Border Patrol in 1975. And I think that the only way to deal with difficult conversations or situations, past wrongs, systemicness, or systemic harms to us, is to actually sit in that pain and learn how to tolerate it and learn how to accept responsibility for it. And I think I've struggled with a lot of why people don't care. It drives me crazy because I've obviously, when I first started talking about this, people were like, oh, it's not going to go anywhere. Your book's never going to be printed, this and that, da da da. And I mean, but even looking at my own family, we had sexual assault in my own family. And my sister and I were both victims, and yet family members choose to not believe it.
Absolutely.
um yeah, and then we go to politicians. I think, I could list a number of politicians, but just recently I'm thinking of the October 7th Hamas attack in Israel. And we know about the history of Israeli sexual assault against Palestinians, and that continues today. And then you see like HRC, obviously Hillary Rodham Clinton calling out the sexual violence that occurred on October 7th to women. And I think that's a good thing. We need to call it out, but also, where has she been in as far as the sexual violence being committed against Palestinians? But even more so, this is a woman who has been the first lady. This is a woman who's been a sitting senator. She's been the Secretary of State. And yet she absolutely has to know about the systemic sexual assault in the federal government and the federal law enforcement agencies. And yet she won't say anything about that. But she's okay
Right.
with going across the ocean to rightfully call this out. I understand that. But at the same time, when you say, well, what about this? What about what's going on? And I've proved it and all that, not a que ver, as they say in Spanish. And then that brings me forward to the Border Patrol, which I've documented it over the years. I've gotten other organizations to document it. Even congressmen have come forward and said we need to have hearings on it based off of my work. And yet nothing ever, ever, ever seems to happen. And like one of the paragraphs you wrote was that you said, what unsettled me talking about this man in court who could could put this forward facing of I'm a complete gentleman and she's a crazy idiot who doesn't know what she's talking about. You said, what unsettled me was not the man's cruelty, but his fluency. He understood the decorum that was required to appear safe. He knew how the institutions needed to avoid certain topics in what he said, and the institutions, meaning the courtroom, preferred it that way, and that he relied on the fact that no one wanted to say plainly what was actually happening. And I sat back because I'm like, the Border Patrol relies on its victims, not just like I did, not wanting to disparage the Border Patrol name, not
That's
understanding how this giant system has been created to protect these agents, and
Yep.
how the men literally do not say the motto "otter first," they say "on her first." It's such a joke in the Border Patrol.
Oh, ha ha. Isn't that lovely?
You said naming it would have required responsibility, and nobody in the room was willing to take it. Border Patrol refuses to talk about this, and in fact, when the chief Rodney Scott, he was chief during Biden's administration. Now he's the commissioner of CBP. When Biden told him to resign, he immediately got on X or Twitter, whatever it was back then, and he attacked me for talking about my rape publicly, and even wrote to me privately and said, how dare you talk about this and all this other stuff, and you're ruining, the reputation of the Border Patrol, kind of thing. And I'm like, you damn well know what's going on in that agency, and they will admit it privately and tell you that they want to do everything in the world about it, but then they
Just
don't
don't say
do
it
a,
out loud.
just don't say it out loud kind of thing.
Mhm.
Why are we so afraid to talk about what is absolutely epidemic proportions, probably all over the world, but I'm just going to stick to the United States today? It's obviously, we have it in the White House. It's everywhere. It's through all classes, through all races, through all institutions, from the Catholic Church to the United States Border Patrol, everywhere. Why is this so hard to talk about?
Because it challenges the system of power that has been set up to protect. It's a system that there is impunity for men, as particularly white men. And challenging it upsets the apple cart and the hierarchy that is, this is what I believe that has been established.
Mm-hmm.
That is a frightening thing for people who have benefited off the system of impunity. Until we start talking about it and we continue to press the issues and continue to bring it up and to have, we've been taught not to have uncomfortable conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable. I mean, who likes uh, working in domestic violence? The things that I would discuss with women day in and day out were the most atrocious
Mm-hmm.
names that they were called, the things that had been done to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so those are unpleasant things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to go to that but so to say it out loud to other people, they'd really just prefer not to talk about that.
Do you think it's also easier for people to just ignore? Because one of the things I talk about in my book, especially about racism, my own racism, is that the system made it very easy for us to be racist and just say, you know,
Absolutely.
bold-faced lies that they put out, that they still put out for the ages to say, well, there's a legal way to do it, even though the entire time we were limiting who could legally come in and stuff like that. And so they made it really easy for us to be racist. And I think it's very easy in our society to be not just sexist, but downright misogynistic and treat women as if they're just a toy for men, that what men want from them, and children.
I mean, I think women have always stood at the intersection of, I mean, what we're experiencing right now, you can't necessarily separate race from class. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
hard to do right now, right? But we're still dealing with race and class, right? And women, no matter what race they are or what class they are have always sat in the intersection of
Mm-hmm.
those things. And even the women who are in the right class and the right race will eventually come to a point at some point in their life where they realize they too are not at the top. Like you are also fall beneath. You also can only say so much, go so far, accomplish, because ultimately you're going to get knocked down.
It's
You're,
kind of like the Republican women, Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who were all
oh,
pissed off about the Epstein stuff, rightly so. And even like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I know one of her grievances is that she wanted to be a chairman of some commission or something, and they don't understand why these sexist, misogynistic Republicans who are taking rights away from women won't let them be in charge of their committees. And it's like, well, I mean,
they're
come
like,
on.
no, we just needed you for the spectacle. We're not putting you in charge of anything. We just
Yeah.
needed you. I mean, it's like we just needed you. I mean, it's all about we're going to use you up. We're going to use you to benefit
Mm-hmm.
us to get where we need to be. But that's as far as you're getting. You're not ever going, I mean, eventually you're going to get put in your place because people that are in that hierarchy that benefit from it do not, in fact, it's very clear, right? What is all the messaging we continue to see from the very top? There is such a contempt for women in America.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's never been as evident to me in my lifetime as it is right now. Because right now, they're just saying whatever they want. They're going for it, man. I mean, right? They used to
I
try.
kind of like it though, because it's like, well, at least they're actually saying what they're really doing. And,
Yes,
and,
now we
you
know.
know,
Now we know. And I guess that's a great point because now I think you're right because of the subtleties and the nuances that we were talking about, like in the courtroom and what you experienced with Border Patrol.
mm,
I like it's really easy for somebody that's not really looking, that's just not trying to scratch beneath the surface a little bit to go, well, come on, do you really think they meant it like that? I don't really think they meant it like that. Maybe you should just give them the benefit of the doubt. It's that kind of mentality. And now
mm-hmm,
there's no benefit of doubt to be given. He literally looked at a female reporter and said, "Quiet piggy." There's
right,
no benefit of doubt there. Like, what
right.
are you going to say to that? Like, what, he was just cranky? How many more excuses are we going to make for men being so incredibly verbally abusive,
Mm-hmm,
outwardly, publicly, just attacking and verbally abusive to females? When you see that from the most powerful person in office in our country, that there's a trickle down effect of that.
mm-hmm,
And I don't even
mm-hmm.
think it is. And I would like to say this isn't even a partisan thing because it happens on both sides of the aisle, and we both know that.
Uh, Absolutely, yeah.
So it just so
Yeah.
happens that the individual, I have never seen it, someone in office that has been so outwardly misogynistic and
Mm-hmm.
abusive to women before, but that doesn't mean to say that there have not been plenty of people who were misogynists that held that office.
Getting back to your article, you were talking about the refusal that makes harm possible, and you're quoting Mr. Peck in this, and you said that he argued that this evil, this whatever is, we're looking at, whether it's sexual violence, racism, that it's rooted in the refusal to accept responsibility first internally and then externally. And that's what we're talking about with, like, I had to come to terms with my own part in all this as a border patrol agent. I find that's one of the most difficult things for people to do. And when I look at the rape culture of the Border Patrol, one of the things that the agents really pride themselves on, especially when I started talking about the rape culture of the Border Patrol, they really increased the amount of publicity that they gave to every time that they apprehended somebody undocumented or even a US citizen. that had prior sexual assaults, and they will put that person out there and be, look, we caught this guy
Yep.
who's, blah 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 blah. And meanwhile, it's like our chiefs are raping our female agents. They're being raped in the academy. If you know that they're doing this to female agents, what the hell do you think they're doing to the migrants and the children in their custody?
100 million%. Yes. It, mhm.
And I think that, I mean, some people call it like projection. And I know that Donald Trump and a lot of very powerful and people who know how to manipulate know to do that. But it's just like almost this that you had talked about, the denial ends up becoming the entire character, and this is the entire character of the Border Patrol. We're honorable, we don't do this, we blah 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 blah, even though time and time again this agent is arrested for this agent is arrested for that. And then when you ask them to comment, they're like, well, we don't tolerate that. And it's like, but you do.
They know, but they're concerned about the optics. Because if they don't say it out loud and they don't admit wrongdoing, and I think that's a sickness that we have. I've noticed that a job I had in corporate America, nobody wanted to admit that they made the smallest mistake.
Mm.
Nobody would take ownership for even the smallest. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I felt like I
Mm-hmm.
was living on planet Xeno. I mean, because it would be over the stupidest things like, who cares? So you made an error. We just fix it and we move on. Nope, nope. It was finger pointing. Nobody was willing. And in my department, with my team, I'm like, no, 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 that's not the way we do things here.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes. It's okay to make a mistake. The last thing we do, and what we do is we own them. I mean, I felt like I was dealing with children again because that's how I raised my family, my boys was, no, we're going to own this. We're going
Mm-hmm.
to take a look at, reflect on what did we do wrong. We're going to apologize for it, make sure that we own it, and then we move on. And then if it's a mistake that we made that we need to correct, we need to correct. We need to suffer the
Mm-hmm.
consequences associated with that and make a correction, right? So the appropriate response that you would have loved to hear, which would be the moral, proper thing to do, because all people are equal. And if there's a rape culture going on, to me, the appropriate response should be, this is a real problem. We're going to be doing some investigation. We are going to bring people in and we're going to take a really serious look so that we can change because this is not what we're supposed to be standing for. And if it's going
Mm.
on, then we have to own it. I mean, if they can show that sort of contempt toward women they actually work with, colleagues, they absolutely have no care in the least for a person who is undocumented that's in
Mm-hmm.
one of the detention centers, right?
Right. I mean, and I think about the training of the Border Patrol. I recall in the academy, they told us being a Border Patrol agent means you never apologize. Never.
They told you that?
Oh, yeah.
I also have a background in risk management. So I have a risk management, I have a certification, a national certification in risk management. And what you are telling me right now is so, I don't know why every day I continue to be surprised at the things that I hear, but that is so depraved that is what you are teaching
Uh-huh.
people that are coming into an academy who, that is the counterintuitive to what the image that they portray about who they are. So what
Mm-hmm.
you're telling me is they're completely at odds, not just with the rape culture, but with who they actually are. It's like this is our image to the public, but this is what we really do behind the scenes. They have,
That's 100%.
yeah. So it sounds like they're
Absolutely.
schizophrenic.
I think another part of your article, you talk about responsibility is difficult to accept, not because it's confusing, but because it hurts. It carries shame, consequence, and the demand of change. But avoiding it offers immediate relief. And so, in not responding to me and not all my demands from the chiefs that we address this, my demands of congressional members who I've talked to and demanded they address this, they just ignore me, and they just keep doing what they've been doing, which is nothing. And it's simply because it's easier. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I was not writing this specifically about Border Patrol, but what I would say is that based on what you just told me, it's not just easier, it's what they need to do to keep maintain the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just because it's easier, it's because it's a necessity to maintain the existing structure.
I think on a personal level, as you get into this agency, in these institutions, talking about the court case you were talking about how they compartmentalize. You don't feel like you're part of this big conspiracy and covering up things. You're just doing the small part. And the Border Patrol has this down to a T. Our government has this down to a T, to where the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is literally just a payoff scheme for employees of the federal government who are sexually assaulted. In the Border Patrol, what's interesting is, so when something like this happens to you, first of all, you have to understand that they tell the men that women cannot pass the physical requirements, which is ridiculous. And you have to be a man to be able to do it. And when women struggle in Spanish or in physical training, they make up false allegations against us. They have private meetings with the men when they first get to the academy, and literally say this to prepare them in, so that when the men do get a sexual allegation from a woman, their excuse is, well, I heard she's having trouble in the Border Patrol, with her classes and stuff. And the rumor
Wow.
among the women is that if they file these complaints with EEO, Equal Employment
Uh,
Opportunity, then we'll pass them over and over and over again. You see this. And then the people that you have to go to, because the Border Patrol is 95% men, because they can never get above 5%, because they're constantly sexually assaulting us, even though they tell the public it's because the agency is so difficult to work in. That's not what it is. Um, and we must overcome our sexual assaults. That's how we prove that we're part of the Green family as a woman, as a female agent. When you complain, your counselor is a man,
yep, of
and
course.
then,
This
yeah,
massage.
one of the agents, and then it goes to EEO, and then you will spend 6 to 10 years with them investigating, deciding what to do. Your abuser sometimes will work right with you, like I had to do with my abuser,
Wow.
my rapist, and yet you're constantly having to prove yourself. The union actually protects him and gives him advice and attorneys, whereas you, as a union paying member, as a woman, don't get shit. You have to put it, even though, so the union doesn't even help us.
Well, I'm
And
no
the union
psychologist.
even admits that the rape culture is really bad. They've admitted publicly and all this other stuff. And by the time you get through EEO, I mean, they're not going to fire him, and they will not, even if they decide in your favor and give you the right to sue the federal government for this, which you probably won't win in the end. You have to do all this with your own attorneys and pay for all this. If you tell them you're in therapy, they drug test you. In one aspect, it's easier to ignore it, but at the same time, these men, the people in these institutions, which does include high ranking women as well who cover for this, create this gigantic system so that they can get away with it. And what they end up doing is they end up moving your abuser somewhere else, even if they decide in your favor. So they move them around just like the Catholic Church does. And you're not allowed to know what his punishment is. And then you just get paid some money to be quiet. That's how they do it. I never got it. I didn't file anything because I knew what all this was and I wasn't going to do it.
I'm no psychologist, but I would say this to me is like, this is textbook, look at this misogynist institution that's been set up, propped up, and maintained by our government. And I have to tell you, hearing this, and because I didn't know all of what you're sharing with me, right?
Hmm.
I'm definitely going to devour your book. But I'm going to because this is really interesting to me. But I am now even more terrified to think about this is what was going on before they got the huge financial boost in the budget to bring on countless other agents to serve in this
Hmm.
capacity. And we're wondering why, I think it was yesterday or the day before, the one creator, Descent in Bloom, I don't know if you know of her, but
I follow her. Yeah, I
yeah,
like her a
she's
lot.
fantastic. But she had posted about that they had attacked a pregnant woman and were
Hmm.
kneeling on her and dragging her by her arms across
I
the ground.
saw the video. Yeah.
Yeah.
On her stomach, dragging her across the pavement in the snow.
Yeah. So, but when I hear what all the things that you just shared with me, we are, how is it possible is my question based on what you said to me and shared with me. How you could bring in an individual who maybe did not necessarily have the same mindset, right? But could you not see how very shortly that person could easily change and start adopting that if they liked their job and they wanted to fit in?
Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
could, so really, it's almost as though even if the people that they're bringing in don't have this kind of a background, it's really easy to become like that quite
And
quickly,
talk
isn't
about that. One of my classmates who I thought in the academy, and you'll see in the book, he's the one guy that didn't say the racist terms. He was so great. He
it?
thought what happened to me was wrong and this and that. And we worked together up in Campo for a long time. And he ends up being a supervisor of the illegal cover-up teams down here in San Diego, and ends up with sexual harassment allegations from female agents, which is why they put him as the supervisor of the cover-up team, because they got dirt on him, right? and and he ends up doing horrible things. And then he finally, he never got fired. He got caught in his 20th year, which for his age made him eligible for retirement. The chief at that time was Rodney Scott, who happens to be the head of CBP right now. He stalled the investigation for months. And then Armando pled guilty and got 21 months so that nothing would be in the record.
Wow.
And so they covered up and stalled for him. But what he got caught for was he was the head of what they call critical incident team, which is the illegal cover up teams. And he installed cameras in the women's restroom, and he was
Oh my,
photographing them using the restroom and
oh my
changing,
God.
and he was sharing it with the men at Sector.
Oh,
Got
oh,
FBI, female FBI agents on it too. And
oh
then
my God.
was making, apparently making money, allegedly making money by posting it on the internet.
These,
And
there's no end. There's no bottom for these people.
yeah, I mean, it's and it's not, and the first thing they say is, well, not every border patrol agent is a rapist. And it's like, I know not every border patrol agent is a rapist, but you all look the other way, and this silence of this is just obnoxious.
I
It's an
don't even think it's
interesting.
just, I don't think it's looking the other way. It's based on what I'm hearing. It's not even just looking the other way. It's literally creating and condoning. I mean,
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
if those are the little slogans that have been adopted, right? That
Mm-hmm.
right from the get-go, deny,
Mm-hmm.
deny, deny, on her first, all the other
Mm-hmm.
things that there are, that is that you're creating it. You're
Mm-hmm.
advocating for it. I mean, you are
Mm-hmm.
actually asking for trouble. And also, ultimately, I think the other part of this article was that the truth of the lie is that if you if we instill accountability and we don't go along with it, the truth
Hmm.
is, if we hold people accountable, we take the power back. And if
Yeah.
we stop buying into the lie, the truth is, we then the power is given to the people that are willing to be held responsible, and things will
Hmm.
be operate the way that they should, not the way
Hmm.
that, protecting this rape culture. Because what is that saying? And I truly believe this, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And
Right.
that's the system that you have in play there. That's the system we have in play right now in so many different institutions. One quote about, I can't remember who said it, about I love my country. That's what was it, James Baldwin. That's why I criticize it so much.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's the same thing. You can love your job. You can love the
Hmm.
institute. You can love the mission or whatever it is of something that you believe in. And something can happen and it could be something that needs to be fixed. But calling
Hmm.
that out should not make that individual who is identifying a problem,
Hmm.
they are looked at as the agitator because they want to,
Yeah, and so
yeah,
they attack you. So yeah, when Rodney Scott made that rape threat against me, he actually testified in court when I took him to court. He said, "Well, I conducted an investigation on her." Like, what? And he goes, I asked CBP, well, at first he said, I ordered CBP's Office of Professional Responsibility, which is their internal affairs, to investigate her. And I'm like, I have not been an agent in over 20 something years. I don't know why you're investigating me in internal affairs. And then he said, well, I asked them actually to keep an eye on her because he realized that was illegal. But that's what they do in these federal agencies is if you come forward with any kind of gripe like that, you are the one that is
exactly.
getting investigated
Mhm.
all of the time. And so in my research of this, I discovered that about a decade ago, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police has the same rape culture. But the women came forward and they fought for over a decade. They got a huge settlement. A
I
lot of the
remember
women
reading
got
about
paid a
that.
lot of money, but they cannot change the culture. They have not been able to change the culture. The same thing has happened. They're getting raped in, hazed in with sexual assault and all this other stuff.
Well, they could change the culture. It's not because they could. They don't want to.
Yeah,
They could. They
they
don't.
could. They don't want to.
They don't ultimately because if you wanted to, you could. There are
Yeah.
things that could be done. You could truly commit to that and bring the right people in and really do some work to transform, right? To
Mm-hmm.
reform, to
Mm-hmm.
reform the entire agency.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to do that because that's going
Yeah.
to
And
take
there's no
too much work.
accountability. So why should they?
Exactly. Well, to create that sort of reform, you would have to set up accountability and responsibility. That would be part of it. And
You
then,
probably have to stop hiring people with sexual assault and rape
well, that would
in
be
their
an awful
backgrounds as
great
agent.
place to start, I would assume. Be a great place to start. Not hiring somebody as that's a sexual assaulter. Yeah, I personally would love to see maybe even start with putting women themselves in those roles who
Mm-hmm.
aren't afraid of um, you know, accountability and responsibility. And I think a lot of women are up for that sort of a challenge. I really do, because
Yeah.
I do. I mean, look at yourself as an example, someone who had, you would be a great example of someone that could truly inspire true, honest reform based on your knowledge and experiences and insight and perspective. But instead of embracing you and saying, thank you for bringing this forward, how can we work with you? We really want to bring you in and help us take a look at our training, our language, because to me it always starts with language. I mean, the more and more you read about things in history, it all starts there because that starts changing how your brain actually views a situation. That's how
Mm-hmm.
they were able to do the things that they were able to do in Nazi Germany, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the same thing as to me, what if people are walking in the door and men are walking in the door and they're having these private meetings with them and coaching them on, it sounds like they're joining some fraternity.
That's exactly what it is.
It's like, come on in, frat boys. Let me give you your sweatshirt and tell you how it's done. That's what it sounds like you're describing to me. And that is gross, really.
Do you think it's even worthwhile to address something? I mean, certainly in our current climate, it's kind of hard with what we have going on, but let's just say we somehow get our legislator back and they're wanting to actually do, look at the problems in the government and wanting to, deal with, like, maybe let's just say rape culture of the border patrol, or the Department of Corrections and all this other Bureau of Corrections, I think it's called Bureau of Prisons, excuse me. um they have it really bad too.
That they do.
But
Well, first of all, can we talk about the BOP? Like, how is it possible that there's no transparency? I mean, we all know probably what probably happened, but can we all ask ourselves how a level 6 sex offender gets transported to like a cute little work camp where she gets a dog and gets to go to yoga? But nobody
yeah,
is
I mean, it's just like,
identifying.
even when you can convict them and you can put a label on them and all this other stuff, it's all in who they are and who they know, kind of thing. And that's where we
Right.
are, I think, in this moment of our, but we've always been like that, quite
Yeah,
honestly.
I know. Because the people with the most money and the most power are, again, there's this system of impunity that's been set up. We are living through a critical point in history that we have an opportunity to demand change. And
Yeah.
um, to me, it has to be across the board. So when you're telling me that this is a culture that has been created, then this is enormous. And absolutely, there's so much value in changing it because we don't have to just think about it. I think we need to demand it. And from again, I'm less inspired by, I'm not, listen, the GOP does not thrill me, and I am not a supporter of anything going on. As a matter of fact, I'm staunchly against them right now. I will also say that I have seen on the other side many times some of the Democrats are just the
Just as
opposite
bad.
side of the same bad coin, right?
They just don't brag about it. That's the only thing. They don't
Yeah,
brag
there
about it.
so
Yeah.
so to me, um, this is a huge opportunity for I don't know if you ever watch The Left Hook, Ali.
Yeah, I've been on his
Love
show a
that
few
guy.
times. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen you. I don't know if I've seen you on his show, but I love that guy. And he
Yeah.
always talks about um, not we don't want restoration. We have to demand reformation. And I agree with him 100 million%. And it starts at the top, and it starts with also not just giving our blind support to Democrats just because they're Democrats, because they have made some really bad choices too. They have
Hmm.
done I mean, because it's the opposite side of the same bad coin, right? We have to demand, the American people and the citizens have to demand reformation to me across the board.
I was talking with my wife about this same thought, and that, it's very scary to think about the institutions that we've grown up with disappearing. And it's creating a lot of fear, and crisis, obviously, in the way that it's being done. So, with a wrecking ball kind of thing. And yet, at the same time, I remember the last election, AOC had commented that a lot of her constituents who voted for her also voted for Donald Trump. And she was like, I don't get it. And so she called people and said, how, or she put out a call that, like, if you voted for me and you voted for Donald Trump, then I want to talk to you about why
That's
that
smart.
is.
That to me is a smart thing to do.
Yeah. And what they said to her was so interesting. They said, the systems, the institutions of this country are so far gone and so corrupt that we want them torn down, and Donald Trump will tear them down and you will tear them down. We don't care how it happens.
Yep.
So that, as terrifying as all this is, especially getting into our 50s and our 60s, and we might lose our social security and all that other shit. But at the same time, it's like, but it's also the opportunity to build something that we want. And this is
Yes.
what I want to see from Democrats who say, okay, we need border security because there are threats out there, but we don't want people to have, we don't want to have institutions like the Border Patrol that are obviously incredibly corrupt, and ICE. And with all the rape culture, and how do we stop that? How do we start teaching our children differently? Obviously, we're teaching young men the wrong thing. I just, part of me kind of looks at that and I want to know, like, how do we get our politicians to start putting out plans? One of the biggest problems I see is that the Democrats do not, nobody offers any kind of plans except for the right. And even though their plans are very brutal and racist and white supremacy and all this other stuff, it's a freaking plan. And
Listen,
yet,
Jen, I'm with you 100%.
yeah.
100%. I was just thinking today, they already have Project 2026. Where the hell is our Project 2026? Where the hell
What's
is
the
it?
alternative? Give me an alternative.
You know what? Listen, I put a plan together. I called it because Heather Cox Richardson had said,
Yeah.
start putting out there, think about, reflect on what do you want it to look like? And I actually seriously put something together. I called it the Phoenix Papers, and it's what do we envision? Let's write that down because for lack of a plan, and when I published it and put it out there. And people are like, oh, well, that's never going to happen. Like, oh, I mean, it sounds like pie in the sky, and I thought, well, it's better than nothing. We're,
But you have to say what you want and then talk about how to get there and think about it and rework it and massage it and all this other. I
yes.
mean, but just to sit at home and go, well, I don't really know what to say on immigration, so I'm just going to say Republican light shit. It's like, so we've seen the Me Too movement and all this, which to me ended up, I mean, that obviously influenced me, but it ended up, and I don't know if the woman who started it had plans of where we needed to go next. I haven't had the chance to really look at that, but it just feels like, okay, we're all talking about our traumas, and then it just becomes trauma porn, where
Let's
and
talk
and
about solutions.
let's talk about solutions. So we have to get to the point where we need accountability to show what the problem is, to identify it and to see how the problem is, and then say this is what we want after that. But then to get people of power, obviously, to back it and decide what could happen and what could be. So I could see all of it as being important, but so many times I just feel like we're telling our stories and people are enjoying reading them, kind of thing, but every time you go to try and change something, they're like, well, that's never going to happen because men are just inherently, they can't control themselves around women, kind of shit, and this and that, and they just keep.
Well, guess what? 50, I think there's more, isn't there more women? I think it's 51%. I mean, it's not even evenly split anymore.
Uh-uh.
51% or 52% of our country happens to actually be women. So
Mm-hmm.
we can change that. We have
Yeah.
the power to say, no, we're done with this. I'm not buying it anymore. I'm not buying
Mm-hmm.
into the system. I'm not buying in to the misogynist rape culture that you've set up, not
Mm-hmm.
just in the Border Patrol, but literally across in so many institutions, truly,
Mm-hmm.
and set
Mm-hmm.
up a system that where you are a system of accountability. So even when you're going to the people in power, for example, you know, our lawmakers, they have to have a system of accountability. Because listen, if you're not going to fight for your constituents, get the hell out of the way because we need to put somebody in there who will.
So this comes down to accountability. You have to create systems of accountability.
I
And
believe.
then, I mean, it's interesting. So one of the things I have seen in the rape culture since I've been coming out and talking about it is in the last probably 2 to 4 years, we've had two or three chiefs. They had to resign unexpectedly because groups of female agents came forward saying that they were being pressured to have sex. So it just so happens, I'm saying that sarcastically, it just so happens that the head of CBP Internal Affairs was an ex Border Patrol agent for a long time. He just retired. But they would let the chiefs know you're being investigated for this and you might want to retire so you don't lose your pension because we're going to have to file charges. And then they retire and then everything goes away and they just stop investigating and nothing happens. So, I mean, I feel like that kind of thing maybe needs to be taken away.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think CBP or Border Patrol should be investigating themselves
There should
for
be
all
a
this.
governing
Internal
body.
affairs is a joke, you know,
Yeah.
it always has been. So,
I mean, it would only make sense just like elections where there is a separate investigative body, a
mhm.
non-biased investigative body to for the government to me that could come in to take a look at to investigate those types of things. Because to your point, internal affairs, come on.
And you shouldn't be a former Border Patrol agent
No,
investigating Border Patrol agents.
absolutely not. No, because through your
Yeah.
systems of contact, you know how that game is played. If you
Yeah,
eat,
they're all ex Border Patrol, ex CBP agents they put in there. It's like,
yeah, if
yeah,
you're,
you could be part of an OPR, but you need to go to like maybe Department of Labor or something like that, not your own
yeah,
department. So,
not your own department. Exactly. I don't think that is a wise choice because that game gets played where somebody gives somebody a heads up because they saw a name and they want to make sure. And it's again, we're back to the good old boys.
which is also actually, if like say I was under investigation for cocaine smuggling, if an agent in internal affairs told me I was under investigation for narcotic smuggling, that agent would be arrested. But in the sexual assault in the rape culture, they don't do that at all.
Sounds to me like that's a legal I mean, that's again, here we are with we only have to follow the laws that we want to follow. Not, I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't apply to us in these situations. I mean, that is unlawful. And I respect the rule of law. I really do. Like that's the other part of this. I've always been one of those people that, oh, if this is the like we abide by the law, whatever the law is. But I think the system that you're describing to me sounds like the law only applies to them when it suits them.
But you say, so what happens if we stop performing goodness and begin practicing it? And we need to demand accountability. And I think that that is the best way to put it. They're so performative. We have to stop all this performing of the goodness. You see it in Donald Trump when he talks about, migrants. What was the name? What's the name of Blake and Riley or something like
Blake
that?
and Riley, which
Yeah,
think about like that, like when you,
it's
here's
like what
my,
happened to her is horrible. Yeah, I
I
mean,
spend a lot of time looking at the way that the manipulation, again with the language, right?
mm-hmm.
Obviously, what happened to Lake and Riley is
Lake and Riley.
horrific.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, I'm a mother. There's no, I can't imagine losing a child. Nevertheless, losing a child to such horrible violence.
Mm-hmm.
But using that as the premise for why you are now literally torturing, hunting, racially profiling brown and black people across the country because one person from a certain ethnic population committed that horrific, heinous crime. Why are we not rounding up all the white people who have been identified on their own, by the way, DHS's own website identified that white, far right wing individuals are that group is the number one threat of domestic terrorists. So why are we rounding up all the white dudes and deciding to deport them somewhere then? I mean, it's using that same logic. It's crazy.
But I think it comes down to the fact that white men are above everybody else.
Well,
They can do whatever
exactly.
they want to.
Right. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't still put the argument back in their face because they can't
Right.
answer it. Because they can't answer it. They're
Right.
on top of it, they're taking what I find interesting. They always invert it. It's always inverting and projecting the same depravity that they possess. Always. Are there some bad actors in that group? There's bad actors in every group,
In
right?
every group.
In
Yep.
every single group. But I can't fathom as a mother that I would want the things that are being done to human beings happening in my child's name. I'll be
Right.
damned. Because the
Yeah.
suffering and the pain and the trauma that is being done to people right now in the name of that one young lady, I don't even know how that mom, I wouldn't be able to sleep knowing that that was
Yeah.
done in my child's name. Because that doesn't bring my child back. It just causes more pain and suffering and horrible things to so many countless other people that are innocent in the whole
Hmm.
situation. Because there's so many people, 70% that don't even have haven't even committed one crime.
It's interesting too because the violent crimes committed by Border Patrol agents as a population is equal to or higher than usually the migrants they arrest every year.
Is that right?
But for the Border Patrol, they're like, look, the reported arrest, and these are like not even accurate numbers, but the reported arrests this month are low and blah blah blah. And it's like it's the same as the amount, percentage wise per population if you look at it. And it's just because every population has bad actors kind of thing. When you talk to when I've talked to chiefs and they'll say, well, we got this guy we saved, he was raping children or this or that and blah 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 and look how great it is. And I'm like, well, what about this agent and what about this agent? They literally will say to me, I'm not going to talk about that. Just will not even address it, period. And of course, nobody will call them before Congress to address it, and Congress doesn't want to talk about it.
Well,
Um,
Congress needs to talk about it. The
Congress
Congress
needs to talk
talk.
about it.
They need to
Yeah.
talk about, again, stop sweeping things under the rug. And I think the what you just mentioned to me about AOC, because I wasn't aware of that conversation that they said it's because
Mm-hmm.
he's going to tear it down. I actually do believe that that is why so many people are so tired of what they're seeing because they know the government's corrupt and they know that it happens on both sides and they don't care because they're just like tear
Right.
it all, drain the swamp. Little did they actually know that the swamp, like drain the swamp, he is the swamp. And all the people that
Yeah.
put around him is the swamp. They just like tacked on a bunch of gold crosses above it. So you're not
Mm-hmm.
looking at the swamp. You threw some Bible verses, wrapped it in Bible verses and the flag, threw up some gold
Mm-hmm.
crosses and called this like, we are just going to clean house. No,
I
we
think
just
one of the
decorated
reasons
it.
why he won the first time, quite honestly, I remember when he won against Hillary Clinton, I was like, not, I can't have a lot of grief with her. But at the same time, I looked at my wife and I was like, do they know this is Donald fucking Trump? Because, because we grew up watching him in the tabloids. Piece of shit. Everybody knew he was taking money from Russia. How come they're not talking about this? Everybody knows this stuff. He's hooked up with the mafia in New York City. Everybody knew this growing up in the 80s and 90s.
I
And
knew
yet
it, but I don't understand but yeah, especially New Yorkers. If you listen to New Yorkers who
they know.
they all know. They all are like any New Yorker that you hear talk about Donald Trump is like, we don't understand what the
That's
hell
why
is
they
going
hate
on.
him.
They're like, because we all knew what the hell he was doing. How in the heck did anybody else know what he was doing? I guess because all these people in rural communities were busy watching The Apprentice and thought he really had his shit together, right?
Yeah, and but also because a lot of the early articles, and Sarah Kendzior, I've interviewed her before, she'll tell you that like her books, a lot of her books about Trump and that they knew all along, and she's been writing for years about this, and nobody would listen to her. It's like those articles are now you can't find them and stuff. So they've been cleaning up his reputation as well. But it's like I turned to my wife when he won, and I was like, okay, like the whole FBI, New York FBI, knows that this man cheats on his taxes, knows that he's this, something is really wrong with our federal law enforcement. And there's, I think, really quite honestly, after 9/11, and now we see it with DHS, they're about to unleash DHS officers that include all the immigration enforcement agencies on Americans with the next voting thing. That's what I expect, is that they're going to stand in line to vote,
Yep.
and there'll be immigration officers coming up going, can you prove you're a citizen and allowed to vote, kind of thing. And that's what's going to happen. And I'm just like, I think after DHS, I know for a fact there's a lot of people that were in DHS creating this from the get-go, that had nefarious um, designs in their mind to create an authoritarian situation. But Donald Trump was allowed to come into he knew that Washington, D.C. was a swamp because he had lots of dirt on everybody. And that's what actually enabled this piece of shit swamp monster to then get into the offices, because he knew it was a swamp.
He was in the swamp. He just threw
He
up
is
some
the
lights.
swamp
He is the
monster.
swamp.
He's like
He's
the
the
head of
swamp
it.
monster. He just, he bought some lights. He, he made it. He threw up some fancy lights. I'm telling you, in gold crosses. I wrote a piece about that too because wrap it in Bible verses and make it sound holy. Again, it's the performance. It's the spectacle. It's not. And I am saying, I think to me, people become nostalgic about we want to go back to simpler times and okay, so to me, I think if you really talk to some people from like the era when my parents, the boomers, right, that was
Yeah.
back to a time actually when I'm not going to say America was ever perfect after the things that I have learned, right? It hasn't
Mm-hmm.
been, but there was a more of a deep there was a community and there
Mm-hmm.
was a deep sense of civic engagement where
Mm-hmm.
there is not, and there was a definitely a larger sense of morality and a sense of community. So there's a gentleman actually from Ohio, and his name is Robert Putnam, and he wrote a book called Bowling Alone. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Mm-mm.
But he actually worked with a few presidential administrations. I believe he worked with Clinton's administration and he also worked with Obama's, I believe. But the whole premise behind the book was, back in the day, there were all of these groups, all these community groups that people belong to when you think about it. And back in the day, also, there was all these bowling leagues, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of people that belong to bowling leagues. And he's saying, that the loneliness epidemic and what's happening to our communities that have just broken apart, and people are still bowling, they're just bowling alone. I mean, that's kind of where the idea
Ah,
came from, but
yeah.
in the sense of finding, reinvesting in your community where you live and really getting together with people for whatever it is. First of all, ideally, civic engagement would be key right now if you want
Mm-hmm.
our country to, you have to invest in it if you want it to become better. You can't just bitch about it. You have to actually openly engage in trying to make it better. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, but even if it's not going to be civic engagement, join a group, become part of something that you're actually
Right.
doing something that's going to help benefit your community in some way.
I think too, because people, and we can leave it with this, is people say, well, where do I start? Because there's so many problems. There's a rape culture, there's this and that, that is absolutely overall the United States. We've got homelessness, we've healthcare, climate change, and this and that. And one of the leaders of Black Lives Matter, I got to see her speak. She had said that people feel overwhelmed, obviously, with everything that's going on. And what you need to do is look around your community, see where there's need, see how you can fit into that. Just do
Mhm.
one thing.
Yep.
Start with one thing and do that. And if we're all just doing one thing, we're all working in different communities,
The slow
helping
drip.
that, and then that'll build from the ground up.
I agree 100%. I just, there's just the slow drip, right? You can have a
Mm-hmm.
slow drip, but imagine what your water bill is like at the end, right? It's overflowing. If,
Yeah.
if we're all just doing that one tiny, you start somewhere, pick a spot.
And maybe that's not, doesn't end up being where your passion is, but you'll grow from that and figure out what your passion is. So, but I think I want to thank you for writing this article. It just really kind of like,
I'm so grateful that it inspired or it resonated with you, and I appreciate chatting with you and having the opportunity to talk. If there's anything I can ever participate in to move the needle forward in the work that you're doing, I would love to be able to do it because what I just learned today from you is really disheartening.
yeah, one of the things that I feel we need to do is start, you know, how the NRA has like this they rate politicians on how they vote on gun rights. And
Hmm.
I think the LGBTQ community does that as well for gay rights. And I think something that we need to do that I don't see anybody doing, especially women's groups, even groups that address sexual assault, is like one of the reasons why those in law enforcement get away uh, with such horrible sex crimes, even when they're caught on tape, is because we have judges that are making decisions in empty courtrooms. So maybe if you're, let's say, even if you're disabled or whatever, but you have time on your hands or you're retired, one thing you could do would be to research sexual assault cases and go sit in the courtroom and
Absolutely.
let those judges see people watching them let off these rapists and child predators and stuff like that, making a list of them so that people can say this judge has done this
Mhm.
over and over again. Um, and politicians as well. How do they rate on women's rights? How do they rate on children's rights and so forth
You're
and child
absolutely
abuse
right.
and
That's a
stuff?
fabulous idea. Because you're right. We aren't, I don't see that. We should see that. We
Mm-mm.
should know their voting history. We should know that. But the bottom line for me is, do you believe that all people are um, deserve respect? Do you believe
Mm-hmm.
all
Are we
people
equal under the
are
law
we
or are we
all
not?
equal under the law? Do you believe that all people are and they deserve respect and dignity and due process? And if you don't believe that for all people, because that's a real, I mean, that's just for starters. That's the bottom basement thing, right?
I saw so much of it because so the way I realized how, like, even when they get these agents into courtrooms, I sit and watch. Okay, how is it that they're getting off? What's happening? And what happens is the judges, because they're all part of the same system, the judges know these border patrol agents. They've been in their courtrooms before, and so even if you have them on film pointing a gun at their spouse saying they're going to kill her, which I have, you can get off with vandalism charges. And
What?
yes, and the reason why that
Yeah.
happens is because they will run these cases out for years and they will give them domestic violence classes, they will give them alcoholic classes, you know, go take all these classes. Oh, you did all the classes we asked you to. Okay, you did a good job. Okay, we're going to drop all these charges and we're going to make them blah blah blah. So the prosecutors and the judges are working to keep these abusers, these violent men, with their badges and their guns. And what I also realized in sitting in the courtroom was nobody is in here watching this. Nobody from the press is watching this.
That's a good point.
Nobody from the citizens are watching this. It's just me. And even when I come in, it's like the bailiffs are like, "Are you sure you're going to stay all day?" And I'm like, "Don't you even think about telling me I got to leave because it's my right to be here and watch this." And so they're even trying to get you out so that you don't watch this. So all of this is going on for generations and generations, and they've just developed this system and nobody ever talks about it, and now the press doesn't even report on it, so it just keeps going and going and going. So
That's insane. But
yeah,
I still think there's opportunity. There's a lot that needs to be
there's
changed. And
opportunity.
we just have to start, we have to start somewhere. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing in that
Thank you.
arena, because we desperately need it.
And I appreciate your work because it's just opening my mind to so much a way to see things, a way to talk to people, a way to understand the problem, and hopefully possibly a way to address the problem and
I do
maybe
have
have a
one.
moral awakening in this country.
That's what I think. I think people, I heard, and I can't claim this for mine. This is definitely Waj Ali, but like I heard him say that people have a righteous rage. And I think that that is happening. Because that's where I'm writing from. That's where
Right.
I'm coming from in my work with women and children, because I have had it. I am
Mm-hmm.
not going to keep my mouth shut. I am going to keep writing. I am going to keep advocating specifically for children. I mean, and women. Those are my passion points because those are vulnerable populations that have had the short end of the stick for since the beginning of time. And
Right.
because of this performative nonsense, they
Mm-hmm.
are preaching morality and doing exactly the opposite. But it
Yep.
sounds really good. And if you're good on stage or on a camera, you can play that off and people believe you. But it's an act.
Mm-hmm.
But if we actually, you're doing that, the work you're doing is coming from a place of a moral conscience.
Well, you can definitely feel the passion and where you're coming from in your writing, and it's powerful
Thank
and
you.
it's very
I
inspiring, and I want
appreciate
to
that.
thank you for that because I write so much negative stuff, and it's just nice to read that and be like, yeah, that's the way, that's where we're going to go, that's how we're going to do it. So
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me I'm coming from you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you.